Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of ancient Indian warfare. Imagine a time when India was divided into numerous kingdoms, republics, and empires, all vying for power and territory. War was the main way these rulers expanded their realms or defeated their rivals. Key texts like the Vedic literature, the epic tales of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, Kautilya's Arthashastra, and Banabhata's Harshakarita give us a glimpse into the strategies and tactics of ancient Indian warfare. Troops were meticulously recruited, trained, and equipped by the state, known as Malla. There were also many communities and forest tribes, referred to as Adavika, renowned for their military skills. These warriors lived by the profession of arms, known as Eljivi, and villages that provided soldiers were called Iwiya. Mercenaries, called Brita, were also quite common, along with corporate guilds of soldiers known as Shrini, who could be hired whenever needed. And in those days, the king or emperor was expected to be a great warrior, capable of defeating enemies on the battlefield and conquering their lands. The concept of Digvijaya, which means a victorious campaign in all directions, was emphasized. A ruler who succeeded in this could become a Chakravarti Samrat, an emperor whose chariot wheel rolls unobstructed. Religion played a significant role too. Hindus saw war as a way to achieve royal ambition and supported the idea of Dharma Yuddha, or just war, to avenge wrongs or claim their rightful throne. Interestingly, even Buddhism and Jainism, which preach nonviolence, recognized the necessity of war for defending one's kingdom. For instance, Buddha advised the minister of King Ajatashatru of Magadha on the challenges of conquering Vaishali. Even Emperor Ashoka, known for his humanitarian efforts, maintained a strong army to ensure the security of his people, which he saw as his duty as a Buddhist ruler. Throughout ancient times, many notable emperors, kings, and warriors were devout Jains, showing that their commitment to their faith did not deter them from engaging in warfare when necessary. And the army was made up of four main components known as chaturanga: infantry, cavalry, chariots, and elephants. They were strategically deployed on the battlefield in formations called vyuha, based on the terrain and the composition of both their own and the enemy's forces. Great emphasis was placed on training both men and animals. Kings and princes were well versed in the arts of war and often led their armies personally. Wooden battle chariots, known as sangramika, served as command vehicles and were valued for their mobility, allowing archers to shoot while on the move. However, by around the 6th century BCE, elephants began to replace chariots as the elite force due to their immense power and psychological impact on the enemy. Intoxicated elephants could cause chaos and panic, breaking enemy morale and numbers. Elephants also had practical uses, such as clearing paths for marches, fording rivers, guarding the army's flanks and rear, and battering down fort walls. Infantry was the largest force, but towards the end of the ancient period, cavalry started to gain importance, especially among the Rajput rulers in north, central, and western India, who even used camels. In southern India, the climate favored elephants over horses, leading those dynasties to focus on infantry, elephants, and the navy. And once the battle began, despite the planned formations, chaos often took over. The infantry bore the brunt of the fighting, facing relentless attacks from chariots, elephants, and cavalry. Unlike the tight formations seen in Greek or Macedonian phalanxes, Indian infantry fought more loosely, making them vulnerable to being scattered and targeted. The primary goal in battle was to rout the enemy and kill their king or commander. Achieving this would usually lead to the enemy troops fleeing, thus deciding the battle's outcome. Commanders and other leaders rode chariots and, later on, elephants, which were pivotal in directing the troops. Battles could occur in various terrains and conditions: low grounds, open fields, ambushes, known as satra, entrenched positions, kanakayuddha, from heights, akasayuddha, and even at night. The chief commander had the authority to order advances or retreats and managed the units using trumpets, boards, banners, or flags. Foot soldiers also fought in forests and hilly, inaccessible regions. The cavalry, fighting as a unit, played roles such as cutting off enemy provisions and reinforcements, scouting, charging the enemy's flanks and rear, protecting other units, covering advances and retreats, and pursuing retreating foes. And the arsenal of ancient Indian warriors included bows and arrows, swords, double-handed broadswords, oval, rectangular, or bell-shaped shields, often made from hides, spears, javelins, lances, axes, pikes, clubs, and maces. Bows were a primary weapon for infantry, chariot, and elephant warriors, and even commanders. One unique bow type was as tall as the archer, requiring them to rest it on the ground and use their left foot to press one end before releasing the arrow. Cavalry soldiers carried 2 lances and a smaller round shield, known as a buckler, compared to the larger infantry shields. And soldiers typically wore quilted cotton jackets or went bare to the waist, with thickly coiled turbans secured with scarves tied under the chin. They also had bands of cloth across their waists and chests for protection. During winters, tunics were worn. The lower garment was a loose cloth, worn as a kilt or in a drawer style, with one end tucked in at the back. Cavalrymen wore trousers. From the Gupta period onwards, soldiers mostly abandoned turbans, wearing their hair loose and donning tunics, crossed belts on their bare chests, or short, tight-fitting blouses. Elite commanders and officials wore metal armor. Other elite troops were similarly well equipped. Armor included helmets, turbans, neck covers, torso covers, sleeved or sleeveless coats, wrist guards, and gloves. It was made from materials like hides, hoofs, horns from animals like tortoises, rhinoceroses, bison, elephants, or cows, as well as chainmail. And the emperor or king was always the supreme commander, followed by the crown prince, Yuvaraja, and the general or commander-in-chief Senapati. Below them were superintendents of the various arms, Rathadyaksha, chariots, Gajadyaksha, elephants, Ashvadyaksha, cavalry, Patyadaksha, infantry, and admirals, Navadyaksha, for the navy. In some kingdoms, the cavalry and elephants formed a single division. The ranks and units varied across kingdoms and time periods, with terms for senior commanders including Mahadandanayaka or Mahabaladikrita, followed by Dandanayaka or Baladikrita, Nayaka, and Gulman. Soldiers in a company were called Galmika. Chief ministers occasionally accompanied the army. In the Magadha kingdom, officials known as Mahamatras managed the war department, and forts played a vital role in ancient Indian warfare. They weren't just for protecting the people living nearby, but were essential for the kingdom's defense. Forts offered a safe haven for the king and his armies, preventing invaders from advancing further into the kingdom. Capturing forts was often necessary because enemy capitals were usually fortified. Without capturing these strategic strongholds, an invader couldn't claim victory. Additionally, forts served as administrative centers. They were built in border regions, at the kingdom's extremes, and in various terrains like islands, Audaka, hills, Purvita or Gurudurga, deserts, Danvana, and forests, Vanadurga. These forts were equipped with moats, ramparts, parapets, towers, turrets, and positions for archers. They had secret passageways, multiple gates and exits, along with ample supplies to withstand long sieges, including food and weaponry. Specialized garrison troops defended the forts. Elephants, known as Purabatera, were used to break through fort gates. Archers played significant roles in both attack and defense. Generally, assaults aimed to breach gates after crossing moats or to lure the enemy into a sally. The best time for an assault was when the enemy was exhausted from fighting, with many soldiers lost, and the general populace inside the fort was distracted. Weather conditions also influenced the timing of an assault, and the navy was another essential component, used for transporting troops to distant battlefields, participating in warfare, and protecting maritime trade routes from pirates. Though naval battles were less frequent than land battles, They were crucial in specific scenarios, such as conquering islands or fighting seafaring peoples. Western, southern, and coastal Eastern Indian dynasties, reliant on maritime trade, built strong navies. Most naval battles took place in these regions and the adjacent high seas, driven by the need to control lucrative foreign trade. Destroying the enemy's navy was necessary to capture their trade routes. Wars with Sri Lankan kings led southern dynasties to bolster their navies, and the Cholas conducted expeditions even to Southeast Asia. Ancient Indians had extensive knowledge of shipbuilding materials, varieties, and properties. The Yuktakupataru of King Bhoja is the only ancient Indian work detailing shipping, mentioning a vessel type called Agramandira, with cabins toward the prows, suitable for naval warfare. Ships could have single, double, or triple masts, with a number of oarsmen depending on the vessel's size and the warriors on board. Though there are no direct references to how naval battles were conducted, it is likely that ships carried warriors equipped with standard weapons like swords, javelins, maces, and spears. Archers played a significant role, especially using fire arrows. When enemy ships came within range, soldiers would engage in hand-to-hand combat, attempting to board enemy vessels, kill as many opponents as possible, and then return to their own ship if they survived. The main goal was to destroy enemy ships either by breaking them or setting them on fire. Some ships had devices for pelting stones at enemy vessels to smash them. And in ancient India, warfare strategies were both offensive and defensive. Kings and commanders often saw war as a path to increasing their glory and conquering new territories. Offensive strategies allowed armies to traverse large distances, intimidating or defeating adversaries on the battlefield. Armies were stationed strategically to counter threats from different directions. Defensively, ancient Indian kingdoms did not typically preempt threats from invaders. Even when faced with Macedonians, Greeks, Scythians, Huns, and later Turkic invaders, the Indian military system remained largely unchanged until continuous defeats forced some adaptations. However, these changes were often short-lived, with subsequent leaders reverting to traditional methods. For instance, despite facing horse archers in the 5th to 8th century CE, Indian armies failed to adapt effectively against similar tactics used by Turkic generals in 1192 CE. This lack of adaptation led to devastating defeats, such as the Rajput valor being futile against mobile cavalry. The traditional battle array placed elephants at the front, chariots on the flanks, and horses on the wings. While this formation aimed to break the enemy's center, it had significant drawbacks. Elephants, despite their training, could become uncontrollable, trampling their own troops or carrying commanders away from the battlefield, causing panic among the soldiers. Commanders on elephants were also easy targets for the enemy, often leading to the army's collapse if the royal elephant was targeted and brought down.